Commander Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the exploration ship UNS Discovery. He watched through the main screen as something incredible happened in front of them. Space itself seemed to bend and twist like water. Then suddenly, a massive, alien ship appeared out of nowhere. The alien vessel was huge. It made their own ship look like a tiny toy boat next to a giant cruise liner. The ship had a strange beauty to it. Its surface looked like it was made of crystal and metal mixed together. Lights moved across its hull in patterns that seemed almost alive. The lights pulsed and flowed like the ship was breathing. "Sir, we're getting a message from them," said Lisa Thompson. She was the communications officer, and her hands moved quickly over her control panel. "They're using our own radio signals somehow. They learned our language just by listening to us." Jake felt, his heart beating faster. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. First contact with aliens. After all the movies and books and dreams, it was really happening. The main screen changed and showed the inside of the alien ship. 3 tall figures stood there looking at them. They were not like anything Jake had ever seen. They were much taller than humans, maybe 8 feet tall. Their skin changed color from silver to blue as he watched. Their arms and legs were long and thin. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible. The one in the middle stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Greetings, young people of Earth. We are the Zephyrian Collective. We take care of this, part of the galaxy. We have been watching you since you started traveling beyond your home world." Jake looked at Dr. Rachel Morgan, his science officer. She was staring at the aliens with wide eyes. This was what she had spent her whole career hoping to see. "Your growth has been acceptable," the alien leader continued. His name was Veltar, though Jake didn't know that yet. "We want to invite your people to join the galactic community. Of course, you would need our help and guidance. Your people show some promise, but your ways are quite basic." As Veltar spoke, images appeared in the air around him. They showed Zephyrian ships that looked more like living creatures than machines. The ships seemed to grow instead of being built. They were powered by captured starlight and could change the very atoms that made up matter. The images showed Zephyrian cities, floating in space. They were beautiful beyond words, with towers that spiraled up like frozen music. Dozens of different alien species lived and worked together in these cities. They all seemed happy and peaceful. "We offer you safety, better technology, and a place in the great cosmic family," Veltar explained. "All we ask is that you work with us and accept that we know what is best." Jake could feel the weight of this moment. He was just a ship commander, but right now he was speaking for all of humanity. The aliens clearly thought humans would be amazed by their technology and quickly agree to whatever they wanted. The way Veltar spoke reminded Jake of a teacher talking to young children. It was kind, but also made it clear who was supposed to be in charge. The aliens seemed to think humans would be so impressed that they would just hand over control of their future. "We thank you for your offer," Jake said carefully. He had to think about every word. "But I think our leaders on Earth should hear this before we make any decisions. Would you be willing to come with us to our home world? You could speak with all our governments at once." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. His skin shifted more toward blue, and the patterns of light on his body changed. "Of course, young commander. We are very curious to see what your species thinks is impressive. Please, lead the way to your world." The other Zephyrians behind him also made the wind chime sounds. They seemed to find something funny about Jake's request. It was like adults agreeing to look at a child's finger painting, knowing they would need to praise something that was obviously simple. Lisa Thompson was recording everything. Her job was to make sure Earth got every detail of this historic meeting. She watched the aliens' body language and tried to understand their expressions. They seemed friendly enough, but there was something else there too. A kind of smug confidence. That made her uncomfortable. Dr. Morgan stepped forward. "We're honored by your visit. Could you tell us more about these other species you've helped? How does the process usually work?" Veltar's expression changed slightly. For just a moment, his features showed what might have been surprise that a human would ask such a detailed question. "We have guided many species over the centuries. Each one had potential, just like yours. We help them develop properly, avoiding the mistakes that young civilizations often make: war, environmental destruction, dangerous technologies. Under our care, they flourish." The way he said "under our care" made it sound like he was talking about pets or farm animals. Jake felt a small flame of anger start to burn in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "That sounds very generous," Jake replied. "I'm sure our people will want to learn all about it." The truth was, Jake was already starting to dislike these aliens, despite their amazing technology. There was something about their attitude that rubbed him the wrong way. They talked about helping humanity, but it sounded more like they wanted to control humanity. Lieutenant Amy Foster stood at her tactical station. Her job was to watch for threats and analyze alien technology. She was taking careful notes about everything she saw. The aliens were powerful, that was clear, but they also seemed to think that power gave them the right to make decisions for everyone else. "Your ship is quite sturdy for such primitive construction," one of the other aliens commented. He was looking at displays that somehow showed the inside of the Discovery. "With our help, you could build much better vessels." Chief Engineer Bobby Clark felt his pride stung by the comment. He had helped design the Discovery's engines himself. They might not be as fancy as alien technology, but they worked just fine. As the Discovery began its journey back to Earth, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face a test. The aliens seemed nice enough, but they clearly expected humans to just go along with whatever they decided was best. Jake had spent his whole career in space. He knew that nothing out here was ever as simple as it first appeared. These Zephyrians might offer friendship, but they also expected submission. The question was, what would humanity choose when the time came to decide? The journey to Earth would take 3 weeks. During that time, the Zephyrians made themselves comfortable on the Discovery. They were polite guests, but something about them bothered the human crew. It was the way they looked at everything. Like parents watching children play with toys. Veltar spent most of his time on the observation deck. He would stand there for hours watching the stars go by. Sometimes Jake would join him there. They would talk about different things, but every conversation felt the same. Veltar would ask questions about human culture, then make gentle comments about how much better things could be. "Your people still fight wars on your planet," Veltar said one day. His voice carried that wind chime sound, but now Jake could hear the judgment in it. "Such a waste of energy and resources. Once you join the galactic community, there will be no need for such primitive behavior." Jake wanted to point out that maybe humans fought because they had things worth fighting for, but he kept his mouth shut. His job was to keep things peaceful, until they reached Earth. The Zephyrian scientist, Ari Mel, loved to tour the ship. She would examine everything with great interest. Then she would explain to whoever was nearby how much better Zephyrian technology was. Chief Engineer Bobby Clark had to listen to her comments about the engines almost every day. "Your fusion reactors are charming," she told Bobby one morning. Her skin was shifting between silver and blue as she spoke. "We used similar technology thousands of years ago. Of course, we learned to harness the power of stars themselves. Much more elegant than these crude methods." Bobby gritted his teeth. The Discovery's engines were the best humanity had ever built. They had carried the ship across dozens of star systems without a single major failure. But Arimel made them sound like steam engines. "They get us where we need to go," Bobby replied. He was working on a routine maintenance check and trying not to lose his temper. "Oh, yes, they work," Arimel agreed. "But think how much better you could do with proper guidance. We could teach you to build ships that repair themselves, vessels that never need fuel because they drink sunlight. Your people have such potential. The way she said potential made it sound like humans were smart dogs who might learn tricks if trained properly. Dr. Rachel Morgan found herself in many debates with the Zephyrian scholars. They knew an incredible amount about science and technology, but they always talked about human discoveries like they were cute mistakes. Your mathematics are interesting, said one of the scholars. You take such a roundabout way to reach simple conclusions. With proper education, your species could learn more efficient methods. Rachel had spent 15 years studying quantum physics. She had helped design the faster-than-light engines that made interstellar travel possible. But these aliens talked to her like she was a first-year student. Our methods might seem strange to you, Rachel said carefully, but they work for us. We've made it to the stars using our own science. Indeed you have, the scholar replied, though your approach to faster-than-light travel is so forceful. You tear holes in space-time instead of gently folding it. It works, but at such a cost in energy and materials. Navigator Quindar was particularly interested in human space travel. He would stand on the bridge for hours, watching how the crew worked. His comments always started with praise and ended with criticism. Your navigation systems show creativity, he told Navigation Officer Tim Brooks one day, though they rely on such primitive sensors. With Zephyrian guidance, you could learn to read the cosmic currents themselves. Space would become like a river, and you would know every current and eddy. Tim had navigated ships through asteroid fields and solar storms. He knew space like a taxi driver knew city streets. But Quindar made it sound like Tim was flying blind. Lieutenant Amy Foster kept her thoughts to herself. She was the tactical officer, and her job was to watch for threats. But the biggest threat might be sitting right here on their ship. She listened to how the Zephyrians talked about their client species. They always spoke with fondness, but never as equals. The pattern was becoming clear. The Zephyrians would find a promising young species and take them under their wing. They would provide technology and protection. In return, they expected complete obedience. The species they helped never seemed to grow beyond being junior partners. Tell me about your homeworld, Amy asked Veltar one day. They were in the ship's small dining area, sharing a meal. Zephyr Prime is beautiful beyond your imagination, Veltar replied. Cities of crystal and light floating among the clouds. We have not touched the surface in millennia. Why disturb such natural beauty when space provides everything we need? And the other species you've helped? Do they have worlds like that, too? Veltar's expression shifted slightly. They live in stations we have built for them, perfectly designed for their needs, much better than the crude planets they came from. They are very happy with the arrangements. Amy noticed he didn't say the other species had built anything themselves. They lived in Zephyrian stations, used Zephyrian technology, followed Zephyrian rules. It sounded less like help and more like very comfortable prisons. As the days passed, the crew started to understand what the Zephyrians really offered. They promised to solve all of humanity's problems. No more war, no more hunger, no more struggle. All humans had to do was accept that the Zephyrians knew best about everything. Jake found himself thinking about human history. Humanity had faced extinction dozens of times. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. Each time they had survived by fighting back, by refusing to give up, by solving their own problems in their own way. The Zephyrians wanted to take all of that away. They wanted to make humanity safe and comfortable and dependent, like pets in a very nice cage. Earth is such a lovely world, Veltar said one evening as they approached the solar system. We will help you preserve its beauty while moving your civilization to proper space habitats. Planetary surfaces are so limiting for advanced species. She realized that Veltar was talking about moving humanity off Earth entirely. Not expanding into space while keeping Earth as home, actually abandoning the planet that had given birth to their species. I think you'll find humans are full of surprises, Jake said. I am sure we will, Veltar replied with that wind chime laugh. Young species always believe they are unique. It is quite charming. But Jake was starting to think that maybe humanity really was unique. Maybe they were the first species the Zephyrians had met that wouldn't be impressed by fancy technology and comfortable cages. Maybe the Zephyrians were about to get a surprise of their own. As Earth grew larger on the view screen, Jake felt a mix of excitement and worry. The Zephyrians expected to arrive at a primitive world full of beings who would be grateful for their guidance. They had no idea what humanity had really been doing out here among the stars. The silence in the assembly hall lasted for what felt like forever. Helen Carter stood at the podium, waiting. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure everyone could hear it. 300 alien delegates stared down at her from their seats, and she had no idea what they were thinking. Then Elder Grokmash the Ancient began to move. The old Kreetar was still standing, his ancient armor making small clicking sounds as he shifted. All eyes in the hall turned to him. Grokmash had lived for over 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had fought in wars. That lasted centuries. When he spoke, the entire galaxy listened. Human ambassador, his voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. The translation system carried his words to everyone in the hall. In my long life, I have heard many species try to explain away their mistakes. I have heard excuses, lies, and blame. But I have never heard what you have just said. Helen felt her stomach tighten. She couldn't tell if he was angry or something else. You spoke the name of my ancestor, War Chief Krogath, Grokmash continued. You pronounced it correctly. You knew that he died defending our home world from the Dark Fleet invasion. You understood that his bones were not just bones, but symbols of honor that connected our people to our greatest heroes. The old Kreetar took a step forward. In their culture, this was significant. It meant he was choosing to move closer rather than away. In our traditions, there are 3 ways to respond to great harm, Grokmash said. You can deny it happened. You can admit it but blame someone else. Or you can own it completely and offer your life to make it right. Humans have chosen the 3rd way. This is worthy of honor. Helen felt a small spark of hope, but she tried not to show it. This was just one voice out of hundreds. Grokmash looked around the assembly hall. The human ambassador offers to share her people's most sacred treasures with us. She offers 50 years of service to repair what they damaged. She asks for nothing in return except the chance to prove that humans understand the value of what they destroyed. The old warrior's voice grew stronger. I have seen many battles. I know the difference between an accident and an attack. What happened 3 days ago was an accident, but what happens today is a choice. Humans choose honor over convenience. They choose service over excuses. They choose to give rather than take. He turned to face Helen directly. Ambassador Carter, on behalf of the Kreetar people, I accept your apology. More than that, I declare that humans have shown themselves worthy of respect. A gasp went through the crowd. For a Kreetar elder to declare another species worthy of respect was almost unheard of, but Grokmash was not finished. However, I must also say this. The Kreetar people have made mistakes too. We have been proud and distant. We have refused to share our knowledge with younger species because we thought they were not ready. But if humans can offer their treasures to us, then perhaps we have been wrong to keep ours hidden. Helen could hardly believe what she was hearing. The ancient warrior was admitting that his own people had made mistakes. High Contemplator Isara of the Mothak rose from her seat. Her blue skin glowed brighter as she prepared to speak. The human ambassador speaks what my people call soul truth, she said. This is words that come from the deepest part of someone's spirit. We believe that soul truth can heal wounds that seem impossible to heal. The Mothak leader's voice was soft but clear. When the sacred crystals were destroyed, my people felt that the universe itself had been damaged. We believed that the spiritual balance was broken. But listening to Ambassador Carter, I understand something new. Isara looked around at her fellow Mothak delegates. The balance was not broken by the accident. The balance was restored by the response. Humans have shown us that they understand the sacred nature of what was lost. They offer to share their own sacred things. This is not just an apology. This is spiritual wisdom. She turned to Helen. The Mothak Collective accepts your apology and your offer. But we also want to offer something in return. We have been too quick to judge other species. We have assumed that those who do not follow our spiritual ways do not understand spiritual truth. We were wrong. Today, humans have taught us about forgiveness and sharing. Perhaps it is time for us to share our teachings more freely as well. Lord, Commander Zexthai of the Zephyrians stood up slowly. His silver skin reflected the lights of the assembly hall like a mirror. The Zephyrians were known for being proud and formal. They rarely admitted mistakes and almost never changed their minds once they made a decision. 3 days ago, I declared that humans were enemies of the Zephyrian Empire, Lord Commander Zexthai said. His voice was cold and precise. I said that the destruction of our crown jewels was an act of war that could never be forgiven. Helen felt her heart sink. Despite what the Kreetar and Mothak had said, the Zephyrians were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. If they remained enemies, everything could still fall apart. I was wrong, Lord Commander Zexthai continued. In our culture, we have a saying, actions reveal truth more clearly than words. For 3 days, I have watched the actions of humans. I have seen them research our cultures, learn our languages, and study our histories. I have seen them offer more than they were asked to give. The Zephyrian commander's expression softened slightly. Ambassador Carter, you have done something that no species has done in the 5 million years of Zephyrian history. You have made us want to be better than we were before. The way you have handled this crisis has shown us that there are other ways to solve problems besides force and pride. He looked around the assembly hall. The Zephyrian Empire accepts the human apology, but more than that, we want to learn from the human example. We have made mistakes in our long history. We have conquered worlds and taken artifacts from other species. Perhaps it is time for us to give some of them back. The hall erupted in surprised voices. The Zephyrians admitting they had done wrong and offering to return stolen artifacts was completely unexpected, but the surprises were not over. One by one, representatives from other species began to stand and speak. The Velkan ambassador admitted that his people had been too aggressive in trade negotiations. The Quillen representative said her people had been too neutral and should have helped stop conflicts instead of just watching them happen. Dr. Hayes, watching from Earth through a communication link, could hardly believe what he was seeing. This is unprecedented, he told President Rodriguez. They're not just accepting our apology. They're using it as a reason to examine their own behavior. Captain Morrison, standing at the back of the assembly hall, watched as species after species began to make their own admissions. The Altarians apologized for hiding their medical knowledge when other species needed help. The Centauri Collective admitted they had been stealing water from uninhabited planets without permission. Lucy Davis, working in the Liberty's engine room, had made an important discovery during all of this. Captain, she called Morrison on his communication device. I found something in our navigation computer. Someone sabotaged our systems. This wasn't an accident. Morrison's eyes widened. Are you sure? Positive. Someone wanted us to crash into that memorial. They wanted to cause exactly this kind of diplomatic disaster. Morrison looked around the assembly hall, where aliens were continuing to make confessions and apologies to each other. Lucy, keep that information quiet for now. Ambassador Carter needs to know, but not while she's still dealing with this. Back. At the podium, Helen was amazed by what she was witnessing. What had started as her apology for a terrible accident had become something much bigger. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were talking honestly with each other for the first time. The Eridan representative, whose people had been at war with the Naxians for centuries, stood up and said, "Perhaps it is time for us to try the human method of solving problems. Instead of fighting the Naxians, perhaps we should try talking to them honestly about what we both need." The Naxian ambassador, looking shocked, replied, "We have wanted peace for generations, but we thought you would never agree to it." Helen realized that something amazing was happening. Her apology had done more than save humanity from punishment. It had started the most honest conversation in galactic history. Species were admitting mistakes they had hidden for millions of years. Old enemies were talking about peace. The entire structure of galactic politics was changing right in front of her eyes. As she watched delegates from hundreds of worlds talking openly with each other, Helen understood that this was bigger than just about humans anymore. This was about what the galaxy could become if everyone chose honesty over pride, cooperation over competition, and healing over hatred. The news from Kepler 442b reached Earth within 3 days. Dr. Alan Carter sat in his small apartment, watching the emergency session of the Colonial Council on his wall screen. The politicians were arguing loudly about what to do next. Senator Patricia Cole stood at the speaker's podium, her voice calm but firm. "We cannot risk a war with the sectar hegemony over one small planet. They have thousands of ships and control dozens of worlds. Humanity is not ready for that kind of fight. But these aliens helped one of our people," said Councilman Robert Hayes. "Doesn't that mean anything?" "Of course it means something," Cole replied. "But we have to think about the bigger picture. If we attack the sectar, they might decide to attack our colonies. Millions of human lives could be lost." Admiral Brooks sat at the military advisors' table, her face showing the anger she was trying to control. "With respect, Senator, the Zephyrians saved Dr. Carter's life. They asked for nothing in return. Now they're almost extinct because they refuse to become slaves. How can we just walk away?" The debate went on for hours. Some council members wanted to send a strongly worded message to the sectar. Others suggested offering the sectar trade agreements in exchange for leaving the Zephyrians alone. A few supported military action, but they were clearly outnumbered. Alan turned off the screen in disgust. He walked to his desk and opened his computer. For months, he had been writing a detailed report about his time with the Zephyrians. The report included videos, audio recordings, and hundreds of photographs. He had planned to publish it in a scientific journal, but now he had a different idea. Alan began uploading everything to the public networks: his personal account, news websites, social media platforms, and academic databases. He included a simple message with each upload. "They saved my life when they didn't have to. Now they're dying because they refused to become slaves. This is what we owe them." The first video to go viral showed Vextai gently cleaning Alan's infected arm wound. The alien skin glowed with concerned yellow patterns as he worked. Despite the pain Alan was clearly feeling, Vextai took his time, making sure the wound was properly treated. The second video showed a group of young Zephyrians bringing Alan food. They were obviously curious about the strange human, but their light patterns showed only kindness and interest. One of the youngsters had brought Alan a flower from their garden, presenting it with the shy excitement of any child making a new friend. The third video hit the hardest. It showed Alan trying to say goodbye when the rescue ship arrived. Vextai hugged him carefully, mindful of his still healing arm. The alien's skin patterns showed deep sadness at losing his friend, but also happiness that Alan would be safe. When Vextai gave Alan the crystal pendant, there were tears in both their eyes. Within 6 hours, the videos had been shared millions of times across human space. Within 12 hours, they were being shown on news programs on every colony world, the message boards and comment sections filled with angry responses. "How can we let this happen to people who saved one of us?" They helped a human when they could, have just left him to die. If we don't help them, what does that say about who we are? Retired Marine Colonel Sam Rodriguez was eating dinner at his home on Mars when he saw the videos. He had fought in 3 different colonial wars and had been wounded twice defending human settlements. The sight of the gentle Zephyrians being murdered for refusing to become slaves made him angrier than he had been in years. Rodriguez activated his old military contacts list and began making calls. Within an hour, he had organized a protest march for the next day. Within 6 hours, veterans groups on 15 different worlds had organized their own marches. The protests started small but grew quickly. On Earth, 10,000 people gathered outside the Colonial Council building. On Mars, 20,000 marched through the capital city. On the mining world of Ceres, the entire population shut down work for a day to demand action. The protesters carried signs with pictures of Vextai and the other Zephyrians. They helped one human, the signs read. How can we do less? Other signs were more direct. Remember our friends, and humans don't abandon people who save us. Captain Morrison, still on Kepler 442b with the survivors, watched the protests. On his ship's communication system, Vextai sat beside him, trying to understand what was happening. Your people are angry, Vextai said in his slow English. They are angry because my people helped you? No, Morrison explained. They're angry because someone hurt people who helped us. Humans get very upset when bad things happen to our friends. Vexatai's skin patterns showed confusion. But we are not human. We are different species, Morrison smiled. That doesn't matter to us. You helped Alan. That makes you our friends, and humans protect their friends. Back on Earth, the protests continued to grow. By the end of the week, recruitment. Centers across human space were overwhelmed with volunteers. Young people who had never considered military service were lining up to join the Colonial Defense Force. Older veterans who had retired years ago were requesting reactivation. Lieutenant Jennifer Nash, who ran the recruitment center in New York, had to call for additional staff to handle the crowds. I've never seen anything like this, she told her supervisor. We've processed more applications in 3 days than we usually see in 3 months. The same thing was happening everywhere. Captain Tony Garcia, who commanded a destroyer in the outer colonies, received requests from dozens of civilian ship captains asking to join any mission to help the Zephyrians. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger transports, and even private. Yachts were volunteering for military service. Senator Cole tried to calm the public anger with a speech about the dangers of war with the sector. But her words were drowned out by chants from protesters outside the building. Remember Vextai? Remember our friends? Dr. Carter received thousands of messages from people across human space. Scientists offered to donate their research equipment. Doctors volunteered to travel to alien worlds to help with medical care. Engineers submitted designs for refugee shelters and defensive systems. The pressure on the Colonial Council became impossible to ignore. Admiral Brooks was called to an emergency meeting with the Council's leadership. Admiral, said Council President William Stone, we need to know exactly what kind of military response you're proposing. Brooks looked around the room at the political leaders who had been arguing about costs and risks for days. I'm proposing that we send enough ships to protect the Zephyrian survivors and establish a permanent defense of their world. How many ships is enough? Stone asked. 3 heavy cruisers, 5 destroyers, and 2,000 Marines, Brooks replied. It should be sufficient to discourage further sector attacks. Senator Cole shook her head. That's still too aggressive. What if the sector see it as an act of war? Admiral Brooks stood up slowly. Senator, with respect, the sector have already committed an act of war. They nearly exterminated an entire species for refusing to become slaves. The only question now is whether humanity stands with our friends or abandons them. She paused and looked around the room. But I should tell you something else. Based on the volunteer responses we're seeing, I don't think 3 ships will be enough. What do you mean? Stone asked. I mean that every ship captain in the Colonial Defense Force has requested permission to join this mission. The civilian volunteers alone could form a fleet larger than anything we've ever assembled. Senator, the people have already decided what they want to do. The question is whether the government will lead or follow. Outside the building, the chants continued. They helped one human. They helped one human. The sound carried through the halls of power, making it clear that humanity had already chosen its path. Admiral Helen Brooks stood on the observation deck of the space station above Earth, watching the largest fleet in human history come together. What had started as a plan for 3 ships had grown into something that amazed even her. Ships were arriving from every corner of human space, and more were coming every day. The heavy cruiser USS Defiance was the first to arrive. Captain Rachel Kim had brought her ship from the outer colonies in record time. Her crew of 400 had volunteered for extended duty without hesitation. The Defiance was one of humanity's most powerful warships, armed with plasma cannons, and protected by thick armor plating. Next came Captain Tony Garcia with his destroyer USS Vigilant. Garcia was a veteran of the border conflicts with pirate fleets. His ship was smaller than the Defiance, but faster and more maneuverable. His crew was known for their skill in electronic warfare, which could be very useful against sector technology. But it was not just military ships that were arriving. The cargo hauler Golden Eagle arrived with Captain Paul Turner and a volunteer crew. Turner had spent 20 years moving supplies between colonies, but he had converted his ship's cargo holds into living space for refugees. His engineering team had worked around the clock to install temporary shields and basic weapons. The mining ship Iron Mountain came next, commanded by Captain Steve Cole. The massive vessel normally extracted metals from asteroids, but its industrial lasers had been modified into powerful weapons. Captain Cole brought news that 12 more mining ships were on their way from the asteroid belt. Within a week, Admiral Brooks found herself commanding not the small task force she had planned, but over 50 ships of all sizes. The number kept growing. Every day brought more volunteers, more ships, and more requests to join the mission. Dr. Elizabeth Stone arrived on the medical ship Mercy with a team of alien biology experts. She had spent years studying sector behavior and psychology. Her research would be crucial for understanding how the enemy thought and fought. Admiral, Dr. Stone said during their first briefing, the sector operate as a hive mind. Individual ships are controlled by a central command ship. If we can disrupt their communication system, their fleet coordination will collapse. What kind of disruption are we talking about? Admiral Brooks asked. I've developed an electronic warfare package that targets their neural frequency patterns. It won't hurt them permanently, but it will break their group consciousness for several hours. Without their hive mind, individual sector become confused and defensive. Captain Kim leaned forward in her chair. How close do we need to get to use this weapon? Within communication range, about the same distance they need to coordinate their attacks. The military ships continued to arrive. The battleship Freedom came from the Mars Defense Fleet. The cruiser Liberty brought additional heavy weapons. 5 more destroyers arrived from different colonies, each commanded by captains who had requested reassignment to the mission. But it was the civilian response that truly amazed Admiral Brooks. Marcus Webb, a technology billionaire, donated his entire private fleet of 30 cargo ships. Each vessel had been equipped with refugee support facilities and basic defensive systems. Webb himself came aboard as a volunteer coordinator. Linda Hayes, who ran one of the largest mining companies in human space, provided specialized equipment for building defensive bases quickly. Her company's construction ships could build a military outpost in days instead of months. The communications officer brought Admiral Brooks a daily list of new arrivals. Research ships from universities across human space, medical vessels from civilian hospitals, transport ships from every major colony. Even luxury yachts whose wealthy owners had installed weapons and volunteer crews. Captain Morrison sent regular updates from Kepler 442b. The Zephyrian survivors were doing better with the supplies and medical care his team provided, but Vextai and the others were still afraid. Sector scout ships had been seen in the outer system, preparing for another attack. Vextai asks me every day when more humans will come, Morrison reported during a video call. I tell him soon, but I'm not. Sure, he believes that help is really coming. Show him this, Admiral Brooks said. She turned her communication screen toward the observation window, where dozens of ships could be seen gathered around the space station. Morrison's eyes widened. Admiral, how many ships do you have now? 143 as of this morning. More are arriving every day. Even Dr. Alan Carter had returned from his research leave to join the mission. He brought with him a team of xenobiologists who specialized in helping alien populations recover from trauma. Their job would be to help the surviving Zephyrians rebuild their society. I never expected this, Carter told Admiral Brooks as they watched another group of ships arrive. When I shared those videos, I just wanted people to know what the Zephyrians were like. I never thought it would lead to this. You showed us who our friends are, Brooks replied. Humans don't forget that kind of thing. The assembly area around Earth's orbital station became so crowded that ships had to wait in line for refueling and supplies. The logistics officers worked around the clock to organize the growing fleet. Cargo ships carried ammunition and food to the warships. Medical ships prepared emergency treatment facilities for casualties. Captain Sarah Davis arrived with the research vessel Discovery and a team of engineers who had studied sector technology. They brought plans for disrupting sector mining operations and defensive systems. Their work could help the fleet neutralize enemy bases quickly and efficiently. The news networks covered the fleet assembly with constant updates. Reporters interviewed ship captains, crew members, and volunteers from across human space. The story was always the same. They had seen the videos of Vextai helping Dr. Carter, and they wanted to help in return. These aliens saved one of our people, said Captain Jennifer Lee of the cargo ship Star Runner. Now they need someone to save them. How could we not come? Lieutenant Colonel Sam Rodriguez arrived with 2,000 volunteer Marines. Many were veterans who had come out of retirement specifically for this mission. Others were young recruits who had enlisted after seeing the videos from Kepler 442b. I've been in 3 wars, Rodriguez told his assembled troops, but I've never been in a fight where I was more sure about what we're doing. These aliens helped our people when they didn't have to. Now we're going to help them. By the end of the 3rd week, Admiral Brooks commanded a fleet of over 200 ships. It was larger than any force humanity had ever assembled, including the fleets that had fought the major colonial wars. The final ship to arrive was the hospital ship Hope, commanded by Dr. Amy Chen. Her vessel could treat thousands of patients, and was equipped with the most advanced medical technology available. Dr. Chen had brought specialists in treating both human and alien injuries. Admiral Brooks called a final briefing for all ship commanders. The massive conference room on the orbital station was packed with captains, engineers, doctors, and military officers from across human space. 3 months ago, one human was stranded on an alien world, Brooks began. The beings on that world could have ignored him or turned him away. Instead, they saved his life and asked for nothing in return. Now those same beings are facing extinction. She looked around the room at the faces of people who had traveled from every corner of human civilization to be here. Tomorrow we leave for Kepler 442b. We're going to show the sector and every other species in the galaxy what happens when someone hurts humanity's friends. They helped one human. We're going to answer with an entire fleet. The room erupted in cheers that could be heard throughout the station.